Hola, hoy vamos a hablar de los verbos regulares e irregulares en el presente, que es un repaso muy breve aquí. We have a very quick review here with a lot of information, hopefully in a brief period of time, so please keep that in mind, okay? Primera cosa, verbos regulares, ¿cómo se conjugan? You'll note here that the verb conjugation charts, by the way, are all the way down. I modified this from a presentation that my colleagues used. So please be aware that your verb conjugation charts in the notes packet will still be, 3 and 3. The yo to la usted should be on the left side of the conjugation chart, and the nosotros, vosotros, and eos es usted should be on the right-hand side of the conjugation chart, just like we normally do. So that line in between la usted and nosotros, those conjugations kind of get a dividing line for how to write them out. So you'll note that for all of these verbs, regular verbs, whether they end with ar, er, or ir, what you do to conjugate them is you get rid of those last two letters. So you get rid of that AR or AR or ER. And then you add on the appropriate endings, and they are all underlined in boldface for you, although apparently I forgot the N at the end of comen. Silly senora. So what we have for the for hablar, we have hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, habláis, hablan. For comer, como, comes, come, comemos, coméis, and comen. And for vivir, vivo, vives, vive, vivimos, vivis, vive. Just a quick review that hablar, of course, means to talk or to speak, comer to eat, and vivir to live. Also, if you're a visual learner, it may help you to either underline, as I have here, or highlight the endings, the regular endings of each verb. Okay? It may be helpful to you to do that. We're going to go on to verbos con cambios de raíz. We're going to move on here to stem changers. We'll be dealing with stem changers in the preterite soon. Stem changers in the present are what we're dealing with now. And you see the three major types of stem changers en el presente. We have verbs that change from E to IE, O to UE, and verbs that change from E to I. And what you need to remember about a stem changer is that verbos con cambio de raíz, stem changers, they have a spelling change that occurs in a vowel that is in the front part of the verb. It just has nothing to do with the ending. It does not impact the ending of the verb at all. So we have one example of a verb that changes from E to IE, and you'll note that they change in every form except for nosotros and vosotros. Pensar, to think, pienso, piensas, piensa, pensamos, pensáis, piensan. Poder, oriui, puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, podéis, pueden, and poder means to be able to. And pedir, which means to ask for or to order. Pido, pides, pide, pedimos, pedís, and piden. And of course, there is a short list of some other verbs that follow these same patterns underneath. So I'd strongly recommend that you look up the meanings. You're going to want to make sure that you know what they mean as we move forward, because they are very commonly used verbs in Spanish, and of course, there are many more. Also, once again, I would strongly advise that if you are someone who's very visual, that maybe you do something to highlight the verbs that have that stem change, that E to IE, or that O to UE, or that E to I. Or maybe just highlight the endings or underline the endings to make them more visible to you. Once you've looked at the meanings of those verbs, let's move on to irregulars. So we're starting off here with several verbs that are irregular in the yo form. And what you are going to want to do as well is make sure that you take a moment in these verb conjugation charts and look up these verbs if you don't know the meanings, and look up what they mean in English, because a lot of these verbs are very common and you should be able to see them, to understand them, recognize them, and have this as a quick reference for you. So we're going to start off on the left-hand side of your screen with the verbs that I call the yogo verbs. And the reason why they're called yogo verbs is that the yo form ending changes to go, G-O. Every other conjugation of these verbs is completely, totally, and utterly regular, normal, and boring. You'll notice that the bottom two verbs in the yogo chart, seguir and conseguir, do have a stem change as well from E to I. But we've got the yogo verbs, caer changes to caigo, distinguir, distingo, hacer hago, poner pongo, salir salgo, traer traigo, valer valgo, seguir sigo, and conseguir consigo. And once again, you are going to want to make sure you go back and get down the meanings of these verbs. On the right-hand side of your screen, you have what I call the verbs yo sko. They change from yo, the yo ending has the letter ZCO at the ending. So once again, you're going to want to write down the verb in the irregular yo form. Everything else completely, totally, and utterly normal, with the exception of torcer, which is a little wonky on the ending. You don't have that C, it's just ZO at the bottom, and it's an ODE stem change. And you're going to want to make sure that you look up the meanings as well when you're done. So for these yo form verbs here, conducir, conduzco, conocer, conozco, crecer, crezco, obedecer, obedezco, parecer, parezco, producir, produzco, traducir, traduzco. And as I said earlier, torcer is tuerzo. A little different there. So we have two more verbs here that are wonky only in the yo form here. And then after that, we're going to have a list of 6 verbs that are completely irregular. And please be aware that this list of 6 verbs that's completely irregular is not going to include ser and a star because we already did those, okay? It's also not going to include the star and verbs like that because we already did those. We have here, you can call the verbs ho, because that J sounds like an H in Spanish on the verb, okay? So keep that in mind. Dirigir, dirijo. Escoger, escojo. Exigir, exijo. Proteger, protejo. And of course, I have a couple of things that proteger shall be one word and the JO should be bold-faced. Elegir, elijo. Once again, the JO should be bold-faced. Corregir, corrijo. And then we also have 3 verbs on the right-hand side where the yo form is completely, totally, and utterly wonky, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. So for caber, we have quepo. Saber, se, with an accent. Without that accent, it means something completely different. And ver, we have veo. Once again, make sure that you look up the meanings of all these verbs in English before moving on. Finally, we have 6 verbs that are completely irregular, and once again, as a reminder, we are not including ser and a star here, or gustar and verbs like that, because we've already done them, okay? So we have dar, which is to give, doy, das, da, damos, dais, dan. Decir, which is to say or to tell. Digo, dices, dice, decimos, decís, and dicen. Ir, which is to go, voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van. Oír, which is to hear. Oigo, oyes, oye, oímos, oís, oyen. Tener, which is to have. Tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tenéis, tienen. And venir, which is to come. Vengo, vienes, viene, venimos, venís, vienen. I'd recommend having you take a quick look over your notes to make sure that everything is in good shape. And aside from that, you should be all set. Gracias.